Welcome to another Prairie Creek Cook Time. Today we're making Danish apple loaf, and to start we're going to be using some yeast. So when you're using your yeast, we're using active dry today because we could not find fresh, which is what the recipe calls for. So we did look it up, and you need 2 packages of the active dry to equal the fresh yeast. Okay, then we're going to pour the milk over that, and it's 3/4 of a cup of whole milk or half and half that has been heated to 98 degrees. So we've already heated ours. She's poured it over the yeast, and then you're going to stir that in until the yeast is all dissolved. So to the yeast and milk, we are adding 2 eggs. 2 teaspoons of granulated sugar. All right, we put in 2 teaspoons of granulated sugar. Then we're going to add a lemon zest, which means you're taking a lemon and you're just grating the peel on the outside of it. Okay, then we're also going to add 1 teaspoon of crushed cardamom seeds. We did not have cardamom, so we are using coriander. We Googled it to see what the substitute was. So 1 teaspoon of coriander, or 1 teaspoon of crushed cardamom if you have that. Three-fourths of a cup of raw sugar. We're going to put that in there, and then our last ingredient is approximately 3 cups of wheat flour. Then you're going to knead that into a dough until it is smooth. Okay, to knead the bread, we did put it aside on a cutting sheet. We sprinkled a little bit of that wheat flour on there, and then she's kneading it together. Okay, so we now have our dough mixed or kneaded, and you can see that it's smooth looking and it's elasticy. Okay, so then we're going to put it in a container and cover it and let that rise for 1 hour. Okay, so while our bread was rising, we went ahead and cut 2 pounds of apples. And for those, you were supposed to cut them in thin wedges. 2 pounds is about 5 apples. Okay, then we're going to coat those with the juice from 1 lemon. So that's the lemon we zested earlier. We used the rest of it and squeezed it for the juice. We're going to pour that over it. And then we have 3/4 cup of sugar that we're going to be using. Half of it is going to go in now. So this is our filling. So we measured out 3/4, and we're using half of that in this now. And then we're also going to add 1/2 teaspoon of our coriander seeds. And again, if you have cardamom, you're going to use the cardamom. So 1/2 teaspoon. Okay, then we're just going to toss it and coat those. Okay, then we're gonna put that aside for a little bit, and we're going to place our dough that we had left to rise. We're gonna put that on a flour covered surface, and we're gonna roll it into a large thin square. Okay, so then she's just feeling around the edge of the dough to make sure that it's about even all around. You don't want one part thicker than the other so that it bakes properly. So that's all she did there. Okay, so then our next step is to, using a cheese grater, we're gonna grate a layer of cold butter onto half of the dough. So then using a cheese grater, you can see she's grating the butter over half of that dough. And this is cold butter. We took it right out of the refrigerator. And the butter is 3.5 tablespoons. So we're gonna use only part of it now because we're going to do this half. And then you're gonna see in a second, she's gonna fold the dough. So we covered half with butter, and then we are going to take our dough and we're going to fold half of that over on top of the first half that we just covered. Once you've gotten that folded over, then you're going to roll the dough out again. You're going to roll the dough out again and then grate a new layer of butter onto half of the dough again. You're going to repeat this process 3 times. Okay, hint, you may want to keep your butter in the refrigerator while you're rolling out, but we're putting on that second layer of butter over half of it. And then we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna fold the end over, roll it out, and then we'll do that a 3rd time. Just a tip while you're rolling out, you're gonna wanna keep your surface lightly floured. Not a lot of flour because it'll dry out your dough, just lightly floured so that everything doesn't stick and you can continue to roll it out. So we are on our 3rd time now, and then we'll move on to our next step. Our next step is to cut that dough, once we've rolled it out that 3rd time, in half. And then we're going to put each half on a separate cookie sheet and roll those into squares. Okay, now we have that rolled out in squares on the cookie sheet. So our next part is we're going to take those apples that we put in the lemon juice and stuff earlier, and we're going to line the apples down the middle. Okay, so we're going to line the apples down the middle, and then we're going to top that with pats of butter. So when it says pats of butter, all she did was take her stick and then she cut it into squares. You can see kind of the thickness of them. And then she's just laying those over the apples. And you're doing it on both of the pans. Okay, so we have completed it. We took 1 stick of butter and we cut it into those pats and we divided it between our 2 squares. And so we're ready for the next step. Okay, so our next step then is to take that remaining sugar that we put aside earlier, and we're going to sprinkle that over both of them. And then we also had, we're gonna take a 1/4 of a teaspoon of that coriander. If you're using cardamom, that you would use cardamom, but a 1/4 of a teaspoon on each one. Okay, then our next step is cut slices in the sides of the dough toward the line of filling so you get approximately 1/2 inch strips of dough. Okay, so you can see she's cutting those 1/2 inch strips. And you're going to do that on both sides of your square, and you're going to do that on both pans. Okay, so now we're going to take those strips and we're going to go every other one to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right, forming a braid over the apples in the center. You can see she's just pulling over the left and then the right. And okay, you can see both of our breads are braided. And so we're going to leave those sit now for 30 minutes and let them rise. While they're rising, it says to go ahead and preheat your oven to 350 degrees. For your next step, you're going to take 1 egg and you're going to whisk that. We've already done that, so our egg is all ready to go. And then we're going to go ahead and take a brush and just brush that onto our loaves.
And that's for browning and crisping.
That's for browning and crisping. You probably heard that. Okay, once you've brushed the egg on there, then you're gonna bake those in the lower part of your oven until they're beautifully brown and cooked through. So that says this takes about 35 to 40 minutes. So again, make sure that you put it in the lower part of your oven and you're gonna bake it 35 to 40 minutes. Once you pull it out of the oven, we went ahead and let it cool for about 10 minutes, and then we're just going to dust it with powdered sugar, and you're good to serve.